Hello, Lisa here. Welcome to Walking the Self-Worth Path, a series where I share with you my favorite tarot and witchy tools, techniques, and rituals to support your journey to an empowered life. Self-awareness is the practice of really taking a look at who you are. And this can be a really uncomfortable stop along the self-worth path. It is one of the 5 major areas that we dive into in the self-worth path, but self-awareness is where things start to get really intense. And I say get really intense, although I recognize that for a lot of us, body acceptance and self-care are also very intense, but this is where I really started to feel uncomfortable. And I think it's important to point out that when you start to dive into things like self-awareness, when you start to make those connections into who you are, how you tick, where your reactions maybe come from, or where the way that you interact with the world kind of comes from, and you start to really examine how you cope with change and things like that, you start to recognize that everything has a connection. Everything is going to start to make more sense, but also it means being really honest with yourself, and that can be kind of challenging, really challenging. Let's not minimize that at all. It can be really, really challenging. So where body acceptance as a practice can be super challenging in its own way, this one is challenging in a different way. So I love having tools that I can lean into that are going to help me and guide me and support me in this process. You'll notice when we flip around and look at my favorite decks and books in this category that I have a lot of things that really take me by the hand and help me to look closer, because what I find when I'm left to my own devices and I'm trying to do self-awareness work, I tend to only go so deep, right? So I feel like I need something that's going to give me that little push to go a little deeper, to look a little closer, to get a little outside of my comfort zone and out of my rut a little, because when we're trying to just sort of dig into who we really are, it's easy to stay at that comfortable surface level and not go any further. So these books and decks are ones that have helped me a lot to make those connections, to start to see and examine and be honest with myself about my relationship with who I am and recognizing how my present is connected to my past. So with that said, I'm going to flip around and show you some of my absolute favorites in this category. And while this category changes for me a lot, some of these are my tried and trues. So let's flip around and I will share with you my faves. I don't know why I like propping up this candle on the book, but I just love how it looks. Is that like the weirdest thing? My book. Okay, anyways, let's dive in. So I have a big pile of decks and books to this side and books to this side. So this is going to be a fairly book heavy video, because a lot of the reason, almost entirely the reason I've picked most of the decks that I've picked is because of their guidebooks and the way that they are to work with. So, and then of course I also have books. So this is a very book heavy part of the self-worth path for me, and I think it's because, again, I feel like I need that like nudge of something that's going to poke at me a little bit and help me see things I have a hard time seeing on my own. So we're gonna dive in. I think that let's start with the very first deck, or the deck that sort of started it all. And this is a deck, obviously, some of you know this already. I've been working with the Osho Zen Tarot since I was about 19 years old. And this is really what started my love affair with tarot. It is what taught me how to use my intuition. There's a lot to this deck for me personally. This is not everyone's cup of tea. I do have a full deep dive walkthrough of this deck on my channel that I will link up in the cards and in the description box down below so you can check it out. But I think the reason that this deck attracted me so much when I was brand new to tarot is because these more Eastern philosophies or Eastern inspired philosophies were very palatable and they felt very psychological to me, and there was a lot of draw to working with the tarot in a psychological way for me personally. What I find with the Osho Zen Tarot, like look at where we're starting here. The 7 of Cups, or 7 of Water in this deck, I'm going to zoom us in actually a little bit. The 7 of Water in this deck is projections. I mean, as a psychological concept, as just a concept of how we don't share who we truly are with other people, and we don't always see who other people truly are when we're engaged in conversation or a relationship with those people. That was a really eye-opening thing for me to consider, to recognize the masks that everybody wears to some degree or another. But I find that this deck does a really beautiful job of helping you to sort of look deeper, to look beyond that surface level. And also I feel like this deck is really good at sort of like that gentle poke, that like, are you running yourself ragged? Do you recognize how strong you really are? Where are you being too rigid, too controlled? Are you letting go? Are you softening? Are you open to the adventure? I just feel like it's a great deck at like asking those questions. Like laziness as a concept is about being comfortable for too long. Intensity, like enjoying the beauty in ordinary life. Like there's some really wonderful, are you trapped really? Or is it just your perception? I mean, there's so much great stuff in this deck that working with it for such a long time as just working with this deck exclusively, it just taught me a lot about myself. It also was something like, this is where I really developed my true understanding of the concept of change. And this card specifically really informs actually chapter 10 in the Self-Worth Path, or step 10, which is about coping with change. And if you notice that the 10 is the Wheel of Fortune and 10 is the chapter on change in the Self-Worth Path. Yes, in case I don't say it often enough, and I don't think I do, if you didn't know, my book, The Self-Worth Path, is inspired by the major arcana. There are 21 steps on the Self-Worth Path, and there's 21 steps for a reason, and you will be able to see the correlation if you're looking for it. There's very little mention of tarot in the book itself, but if you are comfortable working with the tarot major arcana, or you want to more deeply understand those deeper lessons of the Self-Worth Path with the major arcana, the Self-Worth Path is organized that way. Right? So it's neat to be able to see those correlations, and that's because tarot informed my journey on the Self-Worth Path, just as yoga informed my journey on the Self-Worth Path. And so those things, I can't separate them, right? So they're definitely there. But anyway, I digress. This deck is definitely a home deck for me when it comes to my own personal growth work. I don't reach for it nearly as much as I used to, but it still is one that I feel like I can pick up and read for anybody with this deck and get really deep, meaningful readings around personal and spiritual growth. So it is really wonderful. If you ever book a one-on-one reading with me, you're always more than welcome to request a deck that you think I have, whether it's this deck or a different deck. If I don't have the deck, I'll let you know. But I'm more than happy to read for you with whatever deck you prefer. I just thought I'd mention that because I don't mention it a lot. So anyway, the real gem I think in this deck is the guidebook. So when you go into any of these cards, you have sort of two sections. Let me zoom this back out a bit so you can see it better. So you have two sections. The section on the left is the commentary, and this is where you get sort of, I think the distillation of the message is here. And then there's this more, I would like to call it like a meditative style of guidebook entry, where it goes a little bit into maybe something to think about. So for example, in this card, Participation, it says each figure in this mandala holds the right hand up in an attitude of receiving and the left hand down in an attitude of giving. The whole circle creates a tremendous energy field that takes on the shape of the double dorje, the Tibetan symbol for the thunderbolt. The mandala has a quality like that of the energy field that forms around a Buddha, where all the individuals taking part in the circle make a unique contribution to create a unified and vital whole. It is like a flower whose wholeness is even more beautiful than the sum of its parts, at the same time enhancing the beauty of each individual petal. It says you have an opportunity to participate with others now to make your contribution to creating something greater and more beautiful than each of you could manage alone. Your participation will not only nourish you, but will also contribute something precious to the whole. And it's written in a very beautiful way, and I just think it's really lovely. And then over here, it's like, have you ever seen night going? Very few people even become aware of things which are happening every day. Have you ever seen the evening coming, the midnight and its song? This is a little more poetic, I feel like, and is more of a meditation, whereas this, I feel like, is the distillation of the message. So I tend to lean more into this side, but that doesn't mean that's the only side that I work with. But the Osho Zen Tarot just has a lot to offer. I have to let my dog out. She's like in, out, in, out. Okay, so that is the Osho Zen Tarot. This is still available. Like, and I think that says a lot about it, because my deck, not this book, because I actually got rid of the book when I first got this deck, which is a whole different story. So this deck was published in 1994. I mean, this deck still being available, I think, is a real testament to its ability to withstand, I guess, the test of time, or hold up over time. A really beautiful deck, and one that has really supported me in my own path. Next up, this is probably the first deck after the Osho Zen Tarot that really I would reach for specifically for personal growth and self-awareness work. Let's just pull out a little bit here. So this is the Dreams of Gaia. Now I have here the pocket edition, which I just love. And the guidebook for the full-sized edition. This is literally, my corner is literally, it's literally falling apart before my very eyes. This deck has seen a lot of love, or this book has seen a lot of love. So when I got this book, I actually, because the book was so meaty and I really wanted to work with it, I color-coded the edges. I used to do this with several of my deck guidebooks. I don't really do it anymore, but I used to do it a lot. So there's still some decks in my collection whose guidebooks have this color coding, but this is really great because I'd use purple for the majors, green for pentacles, yellow for swords, red for wands, and blue for cups, or their equivalent suit in the deck. The Dreams of Gaia Tarot is one of those decks that has just really incredible, again, more psychological, healing style messages that are incredibly poignant and helpful. So as an example, now it's important to note that in the Dreams of Gaia Tarot, the major arcana, in fact, the structure of the tarot is altered, right? So the major arcana is actually longer than it is in a typical Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but it's meant to really show the life stages that we go through. So it begins really with choice, and then you have, did I miss one? I think I did. Yeah, then you have the child. And actually it was reading an entry here that like solidified this deck as a personal awareness, self-awareness kind of deck for me. So it talks about, so here's just a paragraph from the child stage. All too often we hold on to the painful memories and moments instead of remembering those that were full of love, laughter, and delight. We focus on the moments when we felt the most alone and afraid, instead of those when we were surrounded by love and happiness. We see every failure and forget to acknowledge our successes. We see only what we have not achieved instead of what we have accomplished. Yes, life has offered you moments of pain, hardship, and suffering, moments that failed to meet expectations, and may have broken your heart, stolen both innocence and joy, or silenced your laughter. Has that pain and disappointment silenced the child within you? Or worse still, has it given rise to a wounded ego that has made you harder than is necessary? And there's a lot more to this, but then it also has, after this like initial thing, so you've got, that was actually in the section of the past. So in the Dreams of Gaia Tarot, the full-size guidebook, you have a section for the meaning of the card. You have key phrases and a meaning. Then you have past, present, and future, and potential blockage. There's a lot for every single card, and I believe it does the same thing in the minor arcana. Let's just double check. I could be wrong. Yeah, there's no past, present, and future in the minors. There's meaning and potential blockages. Now, this guidebook, it makes the, it's really incredible. I don't work with it as much as I used to, but there was a time when this was, as you can tell, a go-to for me and something that I worked with an awful lot. I feel like my dog maybe actually chewed on the corner of this book. That's literally what it looks like. But anyways, and then we have the actual deck. Sorry, I know I spent a lot of time on the book, but this is going to be a fairly book-heavy video, as I mentioned. Now, in the pocket edition, you get a smaller version of the guidebook, and you get the keywords and the key phrases for each card, and that's it. Now, having worked with the larger version for as long as I did, this actually is suitable for me because it reminds me of the bigger lessons from working with the bigger guidebook for so long. But it's hard for me to not want to recommend that the bigger guidebook and the mini deck. It's like, I feel like I almost need to recommend both because I feel like you're missing something if you don't have the big guidebook. But I also think that these, the pocket edition cards are just better. So the reason I think that is because the full-size edition comes with cards that are both glossy, bordered, and gilded. And this little pocket edition, at least the version I have, is not gilded. It's matte. It's borderless. However, it does make it a little trickier to use these cards intuitively because the structure of the tarot is different and you're missing the titles on the cards, which the larger edition has. Again, having worked with this deck quite a bit, I'm more comfortable with it. But this is still a deck that I tend to work with only for myself. I have used it in a Tarot by the Book episode, I believe on my second channel. Tarot with Lisa right now is the name of that channel. I say right now because I'll probably change it at some point. But my readings channel, I have done Tarot by the Book, but with this deck. But for the most part, I don't reach for this deck for clients. I love reaching for this deck for myself though, and for self-awareness. I just think it's really a great deck for that. And the artwork is absolutely stunning. So this is one that I think is definitely worth working with. But if you were to get this specifically for self-worth path work or for personal growth work, I would definitely recommend getting the full-size version first. Because then you would have access to this really wonderful guidebook. So that's what I would say about that. That is the Dreams of Gaia Tarot. And then we have another one that knocked my socks off for this kind of work. So hard for me to rein this in, you guys. Okay, so the Wild Messengers Alchemical tarot guidebook. So this guidebook was actually gifted to me without a deck. It was somebody had a copy of this separate from the deck and was like, hey, does anybody want this? And I started looking at it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's really, really, really outstanding, this book. And so the deck for me is literally an accessory to the book, which I've talked about before. And I have also used this deck in a tarot by the book episode if you want to sort of hear how the guidebook reads more. But what's really fantastic about this deck is that it's really focused on personal growth. So if you're on the self-worth path and you want that deeper wisdom, I think this is just really, really good at this. It helps to, again, just point out those connections. It helps you to build those connections between who you are and who you've been, looking at patterns of your behavior, which is, again, what self-awareness is all about, right? Here in the Chameleon, which is the 8 of Fire, so that's equivalent to the 8 of Wands, it says, you have nothing to lose. Having achieved a level of mastery and success with your creative pursuits, you can celebrate the strength and courage it's taken you to get this far. And then it says, one of the main inhibitors of success is a fear that others will copy your work or threaten your reputation with public criticism. Chameleon's spirit is here to help you recognize that although these threats are real, you have the resources to bounce back from any attack. You can stay one step ahead of anyone else. Just as a chameleon does when it changes its colors, you have endless creative resources, shapeshift into them as you must. And then it says, your best protection is your own excellence. Can you trust yourself to always be creative in responding to whatever the current conditions reveal? Here we have self-trust as a concept, which for me was a big part of my self-awareness journey. Can you be fearless in the face of criticism, knowing that you're putting forward your best efforts and you can't possibly please everyone? So there's a lot of depth here. And then you even have a section here about where you get direct sort of animal wisdom, where it says chameleon speaks, and then it talks about complacency serves no one. Your pain is a sign of your humanity. Stay centered and focused. Trust yourself. As you can tell, I'm just trying to grab snippets. There's a lot here, and there's a lot here for every single card. There's also a really awesome section in the back of the book, which gets into, well, there's card spreads, but then we get a section on alchemy. Where does that start? Yeah, here it is. Okay. The Alchemy of Awakening. And this section is like worth its weight in gold, because just this little section talks through the basic stages of alchemy and how it relates to personal growth, which is incredible. So again, this book is an absolute gem. And so after working with this book, what I did with this book for a while is whatever deck I was working with that week, I kept this book by my bed, and at night I would read the corresponding entry for whatever my daily draw had been, and it was fantastic. So eventually I bought the deck to go with it. So I bought just the deck, and this deck all by itself I don't think really was calling to me. The artwork has a lot of similarity. It's this kind of galaxy style artwork with animals, but it is really pretty, and it does match the images in the guidebook. So if I want to do work specifically around self-awareness, personal growth, that sort of thing, that's like a bonus card. I'm gonna just stick that at the bottom. If I want to do that kind of work, I can use this deck, shuffle this deck, and then pull, like, read the corresponding entry. But again, I feel like for me, the deck is a means to work with the guidebook versus the other way around, if that makes any sense. And I have spoken about that before, but it is a really, really beautiful deck. And if you can get your hands on the guidebook by itself, or the guidebook and the deck, or, you know, I would just, it's just really good. It's really good. I don't know how else to say it. And I know that at one point there was some considerations of another edition of this deck, so I don't know if that's still in the works, but keep your eyes out, because again, such a beautiful, beautiful book to work with. And I mean, look at how hefty this is. This is like almost 340 some odd pages, including the index, which the index is also really great. And look, the pages are pre-color coded for me because of the way that the pages have been designed. You can easily go to whatever suit you want to go to. So that's really cool. Anyway, okay, enough about that. That was the Wild Messengers Alchemical Tarot. Another one that, and I think this one is actually where my practice has taken me away from sort of Dreams of Gaia. This feels like it fits the same niche, but is that next step for me. This is the Witch's Wisdom Tarot by Phyllis Curott. The artwork is by Danielle Barlow. I have read this guidebook cover to cover. It's outstanding. It's beautifully written. Phyllis Curott was one of my first favorite pagan authors, and this deck is stunning. Oh man, I don't even know where to start. So this this deck takes the major arcana and turns it on its head. It really takes a tarot kind of and turns it on its head. But in this deck, the major arcana actually begins with the world. And it moves backwards. So you move through the celestial bodies, you move through the challenges of the tower and the devil, and you end up at a place of openness and expansion in the Fool, where you can, which is called the Pilgrim in this deck, where you can really start to, you can in a lighter way, you can begin to move forward. There we go. Because you've gone through the lessons of the major arcana, and you now have actually released a lot of your baggage, which I think at a point when a lot of us are getting ready to do the kind of work that I talk about in the Self-Worth Path, when we get to this place where we're ready to like take that stuff on, we're coming into the journey with tons of experiences, good and bad, and a lot of baggage. And so this deck, I feel like, is literally built around the idea of unpacking that stuff, of examining yourself, of recognizing your own patterns. And as far as a deck goes for self-awareness, I think this one probably, if I were to rank these, this one would currently sit at the tippy top of that list, particularly if you are really bonded to and feel connected to nature or the natural world, or you're more drawn to a very like Wiccan or witchy path. This one I feel like just really speaks my speak in that way, and it's just absolute joy to work with. I love that the back is like this compass-like flower where you get that feeling of being navigating along a journey, along a path. This is a really fabulous combination, and the way that the guidebook is written, really, let me just read you a little bit from the Pilgrim card, since, oh, I still have a little flag in here from when I was reading the book. Oh, this is for the major arcana order. That's right, I kept that flagged. Let's go into the Pilgrim. Light of heart with dancing feet and clear eyes, the Pilgrim sets forth, knowing that every path is open before her. Beside her travels Fox with keen senses and keener instincts, her companion and guide to the magic at play within the seeming randomness of daily events and encounters. Patterns will emerge to reveal the Pilgrim's purpose and the meaning of her life, but it's trust rather than foresight that guides her. Trust that she will be taken care of as she travels. Like a child remembering the words to the beginning of a fairy tale, she wonders where it will all lead, but everything that surrounds her is alive, connected, bountiful, and benevolent. All she has to do is recognize that. Free from the weight or the constraints of the past, free from fear or expectations of the future, the Pilgrim is fully present in the moment, in the world, in herself. The feather in her cap reflects the enlightenment she has earned and that she seeks as her journey continues. A pentacle of apple seeds hangs above her heart, symbolizing the elements and spirit that she, like Mother Earth, embodies. Within each seed resides magic, including the great power of rebirth. That power resides within the Pilgrim too, the power to rise again after every ending, loss, or sorrow. The Pilgrim's journey of unmaking empowers her to make herself again, and teaches her that though the forms of life change, the spirit of life is eternal. The heavens above are filled with starry paths that mirror those below. The Pilgrim walks supported, sustained, and nourished by the love from which she was created. Mother Earth fills her path with blossoming flowers, beauty, and blessings. She walks embraced, inspired, and guided. Magic flows from creation into her, and from her into creation. The Pilgrim walks. Life is simple. And that is a very wonderful encapsulation of what the Major Arcana journey in the Witch's Wisdom Tarot is like, and why it is so beautifully supportive of this kind of work. So I cannot recommend enough this one. And I feel like in my own practice, this is now my personal go-to currently in my self-awareness work. And finally, I have to give mention here to the Archetypes, the Wild Unknown Archetypes Tarot Oracle and Guidebook by Kim Kranz. This deck is also a really wonderful one for just tapping into things that, how you feel about things, your thoughts, your beliefs, your structures, how you function, all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's a little bit less structured in the sense that it doesn't feel like Jungian archetypes. It kind of goes its own way, but it really helps you to self-examine, which again is one of the things that we're really looking for. And I like that this helps you to dive deeper. I think this is a really great deck for just asking questions. For asking the question, I guess, is the big thing, because a lot of self-awareness is just being inquisitive, checking in, being curious about how you operate, how you work, what connects your past to your present, what connects your behavior to your experiences. And I think this deck does help you to do that. I think it does it in a much more abstract way than a lot of the other decks that I've talked about do. So if you're looking for something that's going to maybe inspire, that's going to hint without maybe beating you over the head directly with it, I tend to gravitate towards the beat me over the head method, not gonna lie. But this one is really lovely for a gentle guidance to your own exploration, and it doesn't really hand you the answer. It helps you to, again, to ask the question. So this deck is really, really great for that. The book that comes along with this deck is also good at not just handing it to you, right? And I guess that's what I'm talking about. What you get in here is a little bit about the archetype you see in the card, and then you also get these bits around the sides. So you get a bit about what this archetype is like when it's in its light, when it's in its shadow, how to go deeper, maybe something to kind of look at or research or discover. And there's usually a little bit of extra text here and here as well, which just helps you to play with this energy a little bit more. I tend to, when I'm working with this deck, work with a single card at a time, unless I'm doing a really, really beefy, like once in a blue moon kind of spread where I really wanted to go deep and do the extra work. I usually keep this flagged because this has a spread you can do where you break the cards into different categories. Really, really great. Worth exploring, particularly if you want an oracle deck that sort of fits into this category of the self-worth path. This is a really great one to take a look at. There's also another archetypes deck that is much more Jungian, in my opinion, or more psychological, and that is the Carolyn Myss archetype cards, which I didn't bring to show you guys, but is another one you may want to take a peek at. I don't find the artwork inspiring to work with or those cards exciting to work with, but there's some good stuff in that deck for sure. And I'm going to have to stop there on decks because, oh my gosh, you guys, this video is really long. But let's dive into books now. So, oopsies, I just totally bashed my camera. So, as far as books go, what I have is more like that archetypes deck. I have books that like nudge, that gently poke, that gently prod. That's what most of these are, with one exception. So I'm going to start with the exception. And I will start off by saying this actually wasn't my favorite book. The writing style was not necessarily my style. And I did find myself feeling like sometimes there were some puns in here that just kind of like made me roll my eyes. But that being said, the concept explored in this book, I almost said in this deck, the concept explored in this book is actually really, really good. And essentially it boils down to, this is Energy Strands by Denise Linn, I should say it out loud. It says the ultimate guide to clearing the cords that are constricting your life. The basic principle of this book is that every time you have an experience, you basically tie yourself to that experience in some form, right? So it helps you, specifically what this book looks at is kind of what I talk about in the Self-Worth Path around how you build those connections. You start to recognize that your life and your path is a web, and everything that you have experienced is connected, right? And this book looks at one part of that concept in a very specific way. So it looks at the cords, or the energy strands, I should say, that you build with your experiences, with your past. And I think it does do an effective job at doing that. And it also talks about how to release those attachments that aren't serving you anymore. Now it does get into things like self-protection and psychic attack and that sort of thing. If you are intrigued by the idea of that specific thing around conduits of energy that connect you with other experiences or people that you have had in your life or that you currently have in your life, I think it's worth a peek, especially if you already know you enjoy Denise Linn's writing style. And she is the author of several decks, one of which is oh, I can picture it. I can picture it, but I can't remember the name. You guys are going to be shouting at your screen. She's got several oracle decks, and if you already have one or two of her oracle decks and you enjoy those and you enjoy her writing style, I definitely think it's worth scooping this up and taking a peek at it. I believe this is it's a Hay House book, and I did actually pick it up during a Hay House sale. I would say my recommendation is kind of medium-ish. Again, my personal writing style or reading style, I guess, it just wasn't necessarily perfectly for me, but the concepts explored in here are good, and if you're curious, it's worth taking a peek, particularly if you can get it on sale. Now I'm going to share my personal absolute favorites. So I'm going to start off with my two top tier recommendations. I'm going to put them in this order for self-awareness. At least if you have a background that involves dysfunctional family or feeling like an outcast in your family, or you have you have difficult crap in your childhood, I feel like, or in your young adulthood, I should say, Tanya Marcoul's She Book and She Book Volume 2 are out of this world good. They are poetry books, and most of the rest of what I have to show is poetry books. I've got one that's not, so hang out for that one. If you're like, I don't like poetry, it's fine. These hit me right in the feels in the way that helps me to build those connections and go, yeah, like, yes, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel like I have a voice when I read these. I go to them again and again and again and again and again. I have dog-eared, I literally start, what happens every time I look at these is I want to dog-ear every time a poem really hits me hard. And then I realize I'm dog-earing half the book. And I mean, this is me reining it in. I've got a bunch dog-eared. Like, this is a book that I beat up. I read a lot. I go to a lot. I'm going to read you one or two from the She book because, yeah, you'll know what I mean. So her poetry, Tanya's poetry is just numbered. So this is 209. Blessed are the rejected. To those who've been refused attention, acknowledgement, or love, it's time to whisper a final sweet goodbye. And every time that cord grows back, cut it off. You've changed. They haven't. Your heart is open. Theirs isn't. Your river needs to flow, and it's time to open the dam. Blood doesn't always mean family. No doesn't translate into never. Hold on to yourself. Pray with reckless abandon to be free, and don't return to paths that don't serve you. Like, come on. It's so good. It's so good. Here's another one. 246. You're the black sheep, born with the resilience of nature. You, little lamb, were gifted with the pain to bring change. You, seemingly fragile flower, can forget about your blood and remember you have heaven for a sister, a forest for an aunt, and the ocean for a mother. Now stop forgetting your power. Like, I get goosebumps with Tanya's writing. It's so on point. It really helps you to feel something, and those feelings, I think, are really critical to building those connections and starting to understand how you tick better, starting to understand the impacts of your personal history, and just build those, like, connect those dots, right? That's so critical to the self-worth path. And these books have just been instrumental for me. They remain instrumental for me, and I can't recommend these two high enough. I will have links to everything down below. These ones, don't sleep on these, and they're not terribly expensive either. I think this one's it looks like it's about $15 US. Like, depends on the current price, I guess, on Amazon. But yeah, these are both really good. I think they may be both self-published. Well, the first one was self-published. It looks like the second one is Andrews McMeel Publishing, and maybe they're both with a publisher now. I'm not sure. I think the first one was self-published though, but they're really good. Next up, I have two other poetry books that hit me in similar ways that are definitely worth a mention. The first is Amanda Lovelace's The Princess Saves Herself in this one. Now, Amanda Lovelace has several books. There is The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one. The Mermaid Doesn't Lose Her Voice in this one, I think is what it's called. And they're just very empowering. Again, I've got lots of dog-eared poems. Same kind of thing. It's just like, oh, okay, let me read this one. So these are untitled. It says, you were sent down from the stars exactly the way you were supposed to be, the way you would love, the way you would lust, and the way you would find your wings. And no one should have been given the power to take that away from you. You deserve your pulse. And it's so good. Now, Amanda Lovelace now also has an oracle deck, which I've talked about in this Walking the Self-Worth Path series, called Magic, Believe in Your Own Magic, I believe it's called, by Amanda Lovelace. Check that out I've already recommended it in this series, but that's also worthwhile. But this is really, really wonderful. It's the only one by Amanda Lovelace I currently have because I do go for my She books so much, but I really enjoy this one and get a lot out of it. And then finally, the Uncaged Wallflower. This is the extended edition by Jenna Cecilia. I'm pretty sure I love all of her stuff, but this one is really meaty. As you can see, again, I have a ton of dog-eared. Let me just grab one here. Second chances exist, but I stopped handing them out to the people who kept coming back for the third, fourth, and fifth time and expected me to welcome them with an open mind and warm arms. Like, I mean, I can't. These are just really good. They're good. I don't know how else to just. I'm out of words, but they've been really instrumental and really, really helpful to me. So I have a small stack of these. This is basically these books and the next one I'm about to show you. They live on a special shelf by my bed, and when I need a little boost of remembering who I am and what makes me me and what makes me tick, these are what I reach for regularly. That's why they are all dog-eared to heck. Look at that. Like, come on. And it's not just the dog ears that I love. I mean, I love them all, but yeah, I dog-ear the extra potent ones. And finally, this book is so worth a read and a deep dive if you haven't done it yet. This book took me a long time to read. And I have, as you can see, I can't find any now, but I've highlighted the crap out of it. There is a lot here that is really, really good. But essentially, if you don't know what Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes is all about, it's essentially an exploration of different stories and myths that help you rediscover who you are. Now, this is very geared towards women, so that's something to be aware of. Unfortunately, this is a space where I feel like I wish, I don't know, maybe is there a book, if you know, if you've got a guy in your life, or if you are a guy and or you're non-gendered and you know of somebody who, another book that does something similar but is more gender inclusive, I would love to know about it so I can read it, recommend it. But this one is really, really good. It dives into so many different areas. It's wonderful for self-exploration. If you really sit with the stories, if you really sit with Clarissa's writing, which is absolutely beautiful, there's so much to be gained from this. As you can see, my copy is pretty well worn. It gets a lot of love and a lot of attention. And I really took my time reading this book from cover to cover. It probably took me, I want to say, around 6 months of just digesting it in small little bits. Maybe even longer. I know I talked about it in previous like favorites videos and things, but so worth it. And it's been around for a long time, and it's been impacting people for a long time. It's inexpensive to get this like little paperback version. I will say this text felt very small to me, just like compared to like what the size of text that might be in a standard book. I don't know how else to describe it. So I found myself using reading glasses with this, which I don't normally use reading glasses for most of my reading. So it may be worth picking up a larger version where the font is probably a little bit bigger, but that would be the only thing I would say. This book is an absolute treasure. And finally, I have to talk about the SelfWorth Path, because that is, of course, what this whole series is based on. As you guys know, I'm really, really proud of this book, and it is, of course, what we're talking about. When we're talking about the self-awareness step along the SelfWorth Path, this is what we're talking about. So we move through the 5 areas. We've talked about body acceptance, self-care. In self-awareness, we're looking at, in my book, The SelfWorth Path, we're looking at how we deal with change. So there's a chapter called Accept Change. The chapter that I think is really at the heart of self-awareness is Understand Yourself. This is where we explore the web of our experiences and how we tick. And then there's a section about coping with control and also knowing when it's time to let go. These are big, big energies and big lessons. And when we get to this part of the self-worth path, just so you know, there's always, well, throughout the whole book, you will find, so there's a section in here, so this is in the Understand Yourself section. You can see there's a web that denotes that you're in this part of the self-worth path. And when we get to this part of the book, we have a section here on breaking free from learned helplessness. And we also have some helpful journal prompts, putting things into practice. And we're talking about not being a control freak. And if you don't already know, in the self-worth path, you guys, I always share my own vulnerability and my own story with you. This isn't just about like you feeling like you're constantly being like you're having to do all this self-examining. I'm showing you through my own experiences, different epiphanies I've had, different lessons I've learned, some of the difficult things I've moved through in order to get to a place where I really truly feel like I have a sense of worth. And that's what this is all about. It's meant to be an experiential journey for you, but one in which you don't feel alone. So I know I don't talk about it a ton, but I'm really, really proud of how this book came together. I do think it's helpful, and it's one that I can go to myself to look at my own lessons, my own experiences, and remind myself of the work that I need to keep doing as well. But if you don't already know, the self-worth path is a practice, not a destination. So it's a journey that we're constantly going on. That's why we're looking at a labyrinth, because we're constantly diving in and coming back out, diving in and coming back out. So it's always my hope that this is helpful to you guys. So I will have links to everything I mentioned in the description box down below. As always, please do remember to hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video. Subscribe if you're new here. Click the little bell so you're notified of all my future videos. And as always, remember, if you want to book a reading with me, you can always do that over at supportivetarot.com. Thank you so, so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.